And did everyone get it? Okay. I value morality. The standard is maximizing expected well-being. I advocate the epistemology of coherentism, which says that a belief is true if it coheres their overall body of beliefs. Increased coherence implies better justification and higher probability of truth. The witness case proves Murphy. Witnesses report that Nancy was at last night's party. Their witnesses are unreliable. Moreover, the reports are made independently of one another, yet the congruence of the reports establishes a high probability of what they agree upon. Items that individually are unreliable and not justify belief when taken together under convergence produce justified beliefs. Any objection to coherentism presumes its truth because the only reason we object to coherentism is because it doesn't cohere with our beliefs. The initial starting point for objection is contained in the premise of coherentism. Util is most coherent. We all value happiness. McCordo 1. Each person has reason to think that the happiness she enjoys is valuable and that there's the same evidence for the happiness that another person enjoys. If every piece of it is desired by someone, then seeing the value is valuable, we are committed to acknowledging the value of all the rest. Prefer for 6 reasons. First, epistemology, the study of knowledge, precludes other ethical claims because we need knowledge to make other claims. This means any defense on their framework is sufficient to look to my standard. 2, this is not always sincere belief in a particular ethical theory is always lower than your most fundamental beliefs. Third, util is a lexical prerequisite to any other framework. Threats to life preclude ability for actors to act upon other moral theories since they are in a constant state of crisis that inhibits ideal moral conditions. So my offense always theirs under their own framework. Fourth, governments must aggregate good and 90. Public officials are poorly informed as the fact that their choices have on individuals. What they do know are generalities and averages that allows policymakers to use the utilitarian calculus. Fifth, states lack wills or intentions since policies are collective action. Sixth, no act, omission, distinction. Governments are responsible for everything in the public sphere. So inaction is implicit authorization of action. They have to yes or no bills, which means everything collapses to aggregation. And actor specificity comes first since different agents have different ethical standings. Plan text: the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the French Republic, the Portuguese Republic, the Kingdom of Spain, and Kingdom of Netherlands, and the Kingdom of Belgium have an obligation to give development assistance to countries in Africa. This development assistance will focus on reducing health inequalities by increasing funding of health programs and improving livestock development. Stewart and Soulsby 11. It is the home of the world's poorest countries. Africa must have relevance in addressing health inequalities. There's need for a contract between rich and poor countries. An important one is the role of agriculture and livestock development. These countries in particular have an obligation to provide assistance because they have a part in being responsible for Africa's current condition and they benefit from slavery and colonialism today. Ruiz 14. Britain, France, Portugal, Spain, Holland, and Belgium began a competition for colonies. European elites grew rich thanks to African European economies were able to grow and transform into capitalism. Colonialism and slavery were the foundation for modern capital. The consequence was the destruction of self-determination, sovereignty, and cohesion of Africa. Advantage 1 is disease. Major inequalities are present between wealthy nations in Africa. Tegwell et al. 07. Health inequalities have been worsening between industrialized countries in Africa. 6 years of difference in life expectancy is attributed to HIV. Effects of climate change have worse consequences on health in Africa than in industrialized countries due to increases in malaria due to longer rainy seasons. Subpoint A is funding of health programs. Development assistance is on the decline. Corner 17. Donor data trends downward, revealing record 20-year lows in funding. Spain plunged to a record low. 98 recipient countries lost funding. Funding is threatened. To make a real difference, we need to increase aid. Sachs 12. Another 10 to $15 billion in annual aid would enable greater progress to be made. The MDGs for health could be achieved. Aid skeptics have claimed that aid doesn't work. Their attacks threaten the funding needed to get the job done. Development assistance works to fight diseases at grade 10. Diseases such as smallpox, tuberculosis, river blindness, or leprosy have been controlled thanks to development aid. Millions of children in Africa are alive thanks to control of measles, vaccinations, and cooperation to fight AIDS and malaria. Subpoint B is aid for livestock health. Livestock animals are dangerous sources of disease in Africa. Stewart and Soulsby 4. Animals are not dipped for disease control or vaccinated. The buffalo, ox, donkey are essential for basic needs. Diseases trap countries in poverty by striking at incomes, property, and economic security. Loss for herd throws a whole village into poverty because these animals represent the community's wealth. Livestock health is fundamental to millions in Africa. Benefits of aid would include first, a safe supply of protein that will reduce consumption of meat from wild species, which is associated with diseases. Second, global health benefits from reducing diseases at their source. Ebola, monkeypox, West Nile virus, and others can spread within hours from Africa to people in London. Development assistance to control animal diseases, also known as epizootics, is effective. We just need to increase it. Keeman Ward. Laboratories are operated with donor funds. Developing countries have attempted to establish labs for epizootic diseases with assistance of international organizations. Vaccine companies in Europe have continued to produce vaccines. Control of epizootic diseases through mass vaccination campaigns have been effective and saved national herds from diseases, and disease causes extinction. Quammen 12. A pathogen can spill over into people from animals. High infectivity will help it move through airports. Influenzas are adapted for airborne transmission. Transmission separates a localized disease from a global pandemic. There's a possibility of disaster. We are an outbreak, and outbreaks end. Populations collapse from disease. Advantage 2 is econ. Health development assistance is key to econ. Benadi and Mawadi 08. Investment in health is a necessary prerequisite for econ development. Improvements in health encourage econ development through workers' productivity, better modification of microeconomic behaviors related to longer life expectancy, fuels, increased investment, and transmission of capital from one generation to the next. Epizootics stimulate the economy and thus reduce poverty in Africa. Stewart and Soulsby 5. Benefits of aid to reduce animal diseases in Africa would include the alleviation of poverty on a continental scale with stimulation of the economy from the lowest levels. 2 impacts. First, in developing countries, econ boosts are vital to reduce poverty, and poverty kills. Louis et al. 14. Everyday poverty kills more than 50,000 people, 18 million every year. These account for 1/3 of all human deaths. More people die as a result of poverty than any other cause. And second, economic growth is key to help the environment. The Economist. As people get richer, their interests begin to extend beyond necessities. For some people, this means birdwatching. Green pressure groups lean on government, and governments pass laws to constrain companies from damaging the environment. People press governments to look after the environment better. Deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon, for instance, has fallen. Biodiversity loss will cause extinction to 07. Earth life is needed to support Earth life. Species that are mutually dependent upon each other. If biodiversity is compromised, the entire system could collapse due to negative nutrient cycle feedback effects. If enough ecosystems collapse, the cascading impact could lead to species extinction. To ensure the survival of Earth life, biodiversity must be protected. Underview, first AF gets RBIs. A point, NC can dump shells. RBIs mean I can engage in forced clash on one shell, otherwise they win substance if I overcover theory, and they can collapse if I undercover. B point is time skew theory, precluding the AC mute 6 minutes of speech time. RBs are the only way to equalize structural inequality. C point is 2 in our collapse. They can go for 6 minutes on one shell, and the 3 minute 2AR is too short to recover. 2, no emissions. All theory, neg theory violations and halics must come from the text of the AC, not the absence of doing something. A point, it's an infinite burden. There's no way to specify everything in the AC. B, it's race to the bottom, incentivizes people to not engage in the AF and make a bunch of frivolous spec arguments to preclude 3, 1 AR theory, because without it the NC could be infinitely abusive. And 4, the neg must only advocate the converse of the resolution. This means counterplans can't include the res. They actually have to negate. Wow, what a concept. A point, this burden structure is most reciprocal since we both have parallel burdens. No access to step or permissibility, which is good because they diminish the value of the AC and force 1 AR restart. B point, it forces topical debate, key to fairness by ensuring ability to apply research and key education by creating more meaningful clash. Engaging in the status key is social change coverstone. Role-playing policy promotes learning levels of power simulation is more empowering than abating actions of power. Right there.
Alright. Ready for cross?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Starting now. Alright, so what is the threshold for whether or not I meet the burden that you read in the underview?
Which burden?
The burden that you say the
converse?
negative has to meet? Yeah.
So basically it just means like you have to negate the resolution. So if I so for example, I specified certain countries in my plan text, you can't just advocate that a different country does development assistance, because that you still have to negate the text of the resolution from like the NSDA.
Okay, but don't you read, why would the converse of the resolution be reciprocal if you read an alternative plan text? Wouldn't that mean that you get to like somehow specify where the negative just doesn't? That seems completely irreciprocal.
So the reciprocal burden is because the A points talks about like how we parallel burdens. I have to affirm, you have to negate.
Yeah, but you affirm in a way that's specific. Why is it the case that I don't get to negate
so
in a way that's specific?
You can specify, right? Like you can do a counterplan to do something else, but you cannot like do a form of development assistance.
Wait, so I can't do a form of development assistance?
Like
Why?
you have to negate the resolution. You can run counterplans, but you have to negate the resolution.
All right. Let's see. Can I violate that interpretation? Like if I have a different burden, or say that I should have a different burden, then would that violate that as a theory shell, and could you extend it?
I mean,
as
you
offense?
could violate it if you like respond to why you can, like you have to respond to the argument in the underview.
No,
Like,
I'm
if you
asking
concede it,
if
yeah.
I read an NC and then say I shift the burden of the neg and like read a different burden structure, will you extend this as an interpretation and say I violate it?
I'm not going to take a stance on that now. It depends.
You're
like,
not going to
how
take a stance on it? Okay,
No.
perfect. And then let's see. Then you say on Coverstone that role-playing matters. Like, what does this have to do with anything?
So it's just like a K preempt talks about how we should engage with the
okay,
state.
then I don't care about it. You also say 1 AR theory, because without it the NC could be infinitely abusive. What's the warrant?
So basically, like reasons why people say you don't get 1 AR theory is because of like the times you only get one speech
Those
to
are
respond.
reasons that people say, but
Right,
you don't
but
say
the
those. Okay,
right,
so I'm going
I
to
know,
go to the
but
next
do you-
points.
okay.
You say no omissions, infinite, but what if I point out something that you should have done structurally that it's like specifically a good thing? Could I just like outweigh this infinite burden argument and say
Like
that
you
it
can
matters?
respond to it, but if you concede it, then I mean I.
Okay,
just
so
debate
like
about it.
also you say that like the neg has to advocate the converse of the resolution. If I were to omit to do that, then you could extend it as like a theoretical violation. Isn't that also just an omission? So shouldn't your
Wait,
theory
what does
shall
it
go
mean to
away?
omit?
So wait, you don't know what an omission is?
No,
Why
you
are
said
reading this
how do
spike?
you omit the negation of the resolution?
Yeah,
What
right.
does
So
that
if
mean?
I read arguments that link to a different burden and omit to negate under your burden,
Like I'm
isn't
not
that
saying you can't do any of these things. It's just like you have to respond to the arguments. Like,
Yeah,
we'll debate about it.
you're still implying that these arguments matter. Are you just saying the arguments don't matter?
No, I'm not saying they don't matter, but you're just
Okay.
asking like, can I make this argument? Sure, you can make any argument you want.
Okay, whatever. I'll move on to prep time starting now. Spike. Stop prep, 57 seconds remaining. It's going to be one off NCAC. I'm sending it now. Hold on, let me get reply to all. NC. This is my. Alright. Could I use your stand?
Yeah.
Awesome. Everybody have it?
Sorry, hold on. One off?
Yep, one off NCAC. You good? Judges are ready? Okay.
AEC interpretation of all arguments concerning fairness or education and arguments that are negative could violate and must be numbered to run first in the affirmative case to clarify theory arguments must be read at the top of the affirmative case before all substantive arguments use relation. She reads autonomous White in the underview and also says that she won't take stance on whether or not the argument, the burden argument will be viable and something that she can extend in this interpretation sees the standard one and negative theory interactively change the negative strategy because they operate in a higher highest layer of the base. The average all their substances then reads theory arguments the negatives at a disadvantage because any substantive thinking near the AC could be nullified by your theory arguments. The negative should know what they have to do before meeting and then planning a strategy and Netflix outweighs because if the aspect sees first thing is a layer of ground and layering must be done by the first otherwise I can't plan my next strategy. Judge psychology, they get the 2 in order to influence the judgment, have no 3 in order to compensate. 2 is substantive education and theory spikes are laid on the top of the app. 0 is have better substantive debate because the discussion is shifted away from theory spike extensions to the crux of the topic outweighs because they only have 2 months for each topic in terms of critical education because you can only make this in the substantive class. Also, you can't use to spike the out. My shell doesn't indict their ability to be read as theory spikes rather indict their placement of the arguments which is that I did not trigger violation. D is the voters vote on fairness debate is competitive activity being governed by laws and rules. You can't evaluate the debating around the arguments actually skewed to fairness is a gateway to issue to substantive debate. Education of voters schools fund the debate towards educational value and only education has out of ground impacts and drop the bank debate or on that theory 1. Drop the argument incentivize abuse of debate theory and then collapse the substantive by taking a case or extending tricks and enemies. Nag always looks as huge to our collapse ensures the apple always win. They will have a rearranged argument job debaters keep neg layering on it. No FRB has incentivized the abuse by interpretation arguments against focusing interpreting long counter interpretation always when it decreases the chilling effect after completely dangerous some theories so they read a long counter interpretation when they are to get to our collapse and contextualize arguments made would always have disincentives to reading theory against good theory debaters with the infinite use for competing interpretation of reasonability because reasonability A has no problem for mitigating shall be by 2 judgment of French because thresholds for unreasonable use are different. C reads race to bottom which both debaters have being abused so they can justify as abuse so that they can justify also you have also write down your counter interpretation key to have this shift otherwise I would never know what constitutes violation or abuse. Now neg. Junior gaming is not the truth of this has to implication first the proves neg because there are more reasons why a statement might not be true than ones that directly prove the statement true. Second permissibility flows neg because the office burden for some sort of moral obligation since that obligation tells of proving permissibility which is distinct from obligation to negate I affirm and negating value morality and obligation is an act of which a person is morally bound to reason. Morality exists in the first place to regulate their actions rather than any moral code is not motivational. There's no reason to do what is right and code nearly fails to escape the skeptical conclusion motivational externalism classes the internalism joys. How can external reason explain action? The reason must have some causal role in the action. Belief alone cannot produce action in order to explain action. Belief must couple with the direct external reason collapse the internal. Additionally, agents can only be motivated by their own desire, not the external desire of another because A, they're absently inaccessible because B, individuals are unlimited have unlimited wants, those are not communicated. C, we only care about their own desires as long as individuals are interested in helping and don't care about helping others. And this means you can't infinitely motivate people to affirm only a contractarian system that derives principles of mutual strength from individual self-interest account for this fact because contractarian principles are necessarily in the interest of all parties involved because they wouldn't want to constrain their action against their will codiate. Moral principles are objects of agreement among persons. Such agreement is hypothetical, but the parties are agreement are real distinct by their situations and concerns that they agree to so constrain their choices. They acknowledge the distinction between what they may and may not do as rational persons they must recognize for mutual constraint. Additionally, self-interest is determined at the time the original decision to assent to a norm of mutual exchange. For example, I might say that eating ice cream is in my self-interest because I'm hungry, you can lead to extinction somehow in the future. This is standards consistency of contractarian principles and mutual exchange defined as those principles in which individuals would constrain their action with the belief that doing so would serve their self-interest in the absence of contract restraining action. Contractarianism would deem that action only acceptable to the opposition of the date a contract exists that would obligate wealthy nations to contribute to development assistance. Additionally, prefer the standard because consent contractarianism based consent implicit in acceptance of a contract which is ultimately determined for qualifies negative good or harm by euthanasia's word or moral. There's must be based in consent, otherwise action may never be determined. Skip infinite regress. I contend that no contractarian principle exists that wills us to affirm contractarianism requires parties to be equal when entering contracts. Go 2. A context of mutual benefit assumes a considered derivative of benefits of agreement to provide effect each person can have on their fellows only beings whose capacities are equal, can expect to find cooperation beneficial among unequals one party may benefit most by coercing another. Agents that are unequal in capacity would always benefit more from coercion than from a system of mutual exchange, so only equal agents can enter into contract changes but any arrangement between developing countries and developed countries would be unequal. Developed countries are economically and politically more powerful than developing countries would be illegitimate to allow for coercion among parties. Wealthy countries are immune to retaliation both economically and militarily and control international institutions. Even if non-wealthy countries have some sort of retaliation, they are vastly more independent on global north technically. The global south can employ its bargaining power to engineer institutional reforms of limited disability in the UN, but the most influence global south has been to delay processes considered in past experience by developing countries involved in trade and invaded when they became battleground in which superpowers conduct their covert activities, cut the guard there, and additionally whether or not it's good or bad thing that the status of reciprocity between nations is enough for training whether or not it's possible for wealthy nations to have an obligation to take out solvency because states who have that obligation can always go back on their obligation because there's no higher order of obligation derivation that can control them to do otherwise, and be assuming that states did follow through in their obligation can always implement in a way that's really egotistical and implement methods that only help the donating country. The role of the valid truth, I think she cannot contest this because she doesn't read an alternative role about the first speech and shifting and framing the one argument the opposite the 6 times human would always be considered a new argument because framing issues are meant to be in the verb valid explicitly and structured truth as the resolution by giving the option for negate from a stated proposition to negate is denying the truth of this is to provide the outcome putting the rest of the package inside the report the outcome of the round is after and thus the applicant to approve the resolution truth they only prove somehow individualized into the resolution is a good thing now the app. Starting on coherentism. First, coherentism doesn't function because there's no clear metric for what coheres. Second, infinitely many things can cohere, so you still need a higher order parameter that can weigh between them. 3, the overall body of beliefs means that there can be no ethical constraint on what we consider coherent means that a double mind either A justifies anything because different groups, i.e. Nazis, have a coherent system of belief, or B implies that everyone has the same system of beliefs, which is an imposition of some dominant or correct belief, which is independently bad because it imposes colonialism. Additionally, at best, if your response to this argument just means that she has to win the utilitarian framework because there's no direct link between utilitarianism and coherentism. Additionally, the example she uses for coherentism is incoherent with the consequences. The consequences doesn't tell us how the consequence occurred, what action it caused, and thus it can't tell us what action would otherwise have been good. Coherentism might be sufficient retroactively, but that doesn't matter on her 6 blips. 1. A, this argument assumes that she wins the coherentism is epistemologically sufficient. B, this assumes that the epistemology of consequence can normally guide action even if that's important epistemologically, it just doesn't matter. And on 2, A, this also assumes that the most fundamental beliefs are utilitarian. B, what your most fundamental beliefs is doesn't matter. You can still force people, you still can't force people to act on some certain beliefs that they think they hold as innate. On 3, A, contracts are not based in the future, they're based in the moment of a contractual agreement. B, every action that creates an extension of risk because every action creates a chain of effects that cause extinction eventually, and even if there's no way to determine which is more likely to do, we can only determine something might do, but something might do, we can't still determine because we can't accurately predict what's going to happen any more than dart throwing monkeys banana. Professor of psychology at UC Berkeley shows that people more making predictions than appears experts don't know better than the rest of us non-experts can guess what it's likely to happen and accurately as a specialist Tedlock. Experts assess the probability that various things would or not come to pass both in the areas of what they specialize in areas which are not experts. The expert made 82,361 forecasts in 20-year study. Experts performed more than if they had simply assigned an equal probability to all outcomes. Human beings who spend their life studying the state of the world are poor forecasters and dart-throwing monkey specialists are not significantly more reliable than non-specialists in guessing what is going to happen. There's no reason for supposing the contributors to top journals are any better than others. Also independently takes out the framework because we can't expect will increase well-being, and C, we can't get our action based on what happens in the distant future because we would have to wait to see if the thing actually occurred. On 4, over this argument, she says that actor specificity comes first, which means that not when the actor specificity is turned, then she can never win the framework on. So 1, term policymakers can be utilitarians because they have duties to their constituents as individuals, not as a collective. For instance, a politician could justify adopting a policy which had an innocent person tortured and killed for the benefit of others, she couldn't justify the policy anyway. Consistent with the roles and agents of other persons. A 2, term role based on utilitarian duties are considered a feature of public office. For instance, you become president by taking over the responsibility to all votes. The Constitution, whether or not it produces utility. 3, term policymaking involves special duties, limited class of beings, namely ones or citizens or constituents whose interests are one process over util demands that we give the interests of all citizens to be equal weight to the inconsistent with policy making. On 5, it's lack of intentions and we can never know how they will whether or not they will enact the outline to be intentions or not aren't the key to contracts that the ability to constrain action safety and non-intentional doesn't mean they're not they're usually standard. On 6, our ability to compete morality under and paradigm will always be influenced by subjective cognition because no unbiased point of view truth but also under utility negates Franca. Alright, so I didn't read Franca, just cutting right now what I didn't read.
So
I'm cutting it out. I can just send it to you again. Read that. I cut infinite regress. And cut the card there. Alright. Looking good. Save. And apply to all. And see this. Alright. Updated document is sent.
okay, ready for prompt?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain your framework syllogism?
Yeah, the framework is pretty simple. First, it explains that there is a necessity of motivation in order for any action or any framework to actually matter. If there's not a motivational aspect to a framework, then it can't motivate individuals to act in accordance with it. So just because you tell someone that something is good, that doesn't mean that they'll act to increase that good. So that's the first part. It has multiple warrants. The next part is that given that we need some sort of motivation, the only thing that can motivate individuals to take actions is if they mutually self-restrain. Because only when you decide to impose upon yourself some sort of restraint, then can you be internally motivated, because external motivations can never function. So let's go
Wait, so why can't external motivations function?
All right, so let's go through the reasons. So first is Joyce. It says that any external reason will always collapse to internal reason. For example, if somebody says that eating grapes is a good thing, then I would only want to start eating grapes if I said, yes, I agree, I would like to eat grapes, I think they're tasty. It won't force me to act in accordance with eating grapes unless I decide that I think that's good. Then there's the A, B, and C points underneath that, Joyce, that also give you other reasons. So the first point is that the external desires of another are epistemically inaccessible. For example, I can't know what one person is tells me is good under util. So if they say that we should just maximize utilitarian benefits, I wouldn't know what they consider to be a utilitarian benefit, even if they told me happiness. Then the B point is that because individuals have unlimited wants, not all of them are communicated, so we cannot be motivated by their external desires. For example, one person can have an infinite number of things that they want to have, but those things are not communicated, so we cannot act in accordance with them. The C point is that
So you talk about internalism, right?
Well, yes, internal desires
then,
are the only things that can motivate action. Otherwise, there's no way to affirm. So
okay,
yes.
That's fine. And then, okay, so can you go over then why, so like the framework syllogism of internalism, then explain the offense.
Okay, do you want me to explain why contracts matter, or do you want me to explain the offense under contracts?
Why contracts matter.
All right, so I was already going through that. So basically I was explaining that in order for you to have an internal motivation, you can only self-impose that motivation, and you can only do that through mutual self-restraint. That's through contracts. That's the Godier explanation, and I was explaining it in terms of the grape example. You can only decide that you are going to act in this way if you constrain yourself to act in that way. So that's Godier. Then the contention under Godier...
So the contention is that people have to be equal under contracts, right?
Well, first of all, the standard says that we have to be consistent with principles of contractarianism. Then my contention says that if I provide any principle of contractarianism that would say that we cannot affirm, then you would negate, and that you would have to deny that principle and prove that there is some sort of contractarian principle that requires us to affirm. So I say that one necessary contractarian principle is that both parties not only agree to a reciprocal obligation, but are also on an equal playing field. Otherwise, they can simply defect from that obligation, or they can benefit more from coercing the other person in that obligation, which means that it's no longer a sufficient contract. And then that's explained as to why you can't have that under the affirmative world through Kegley and the analysis after Godier too.
That's fine. Okay, start prep. 328 used.
Is it sent?
No, I'm just leaving it. That's all. Sorry, it's not showing up at all.
Well, tell me when it is sent.
Right here. Okay, it's fine.
Got it.
So the order is going to be theory, then the NC, then the AC.
Okay, so wait, so in this document, the
Sorry,
drop the arguments. Okay, so this is first, not the
Yeah,
other stuff.
sorry.
Let me just swap that around real quick. Alright.
Okay, everyone good?
Yes.
Counterinterpretation, all affirmative arguments concerning fairness and education on theory must be numbered and labeled A, B, and C for A, B, and C points. It solves his entirety of the app because it says that it's numbered, so it's not paragraph theory, and he can read all of them. It's proven by the fact that he could read all of them in the case, and he asked about all of them in cross-ex. And first on next draft, he talks about how his interp doesn't even solve the first standard because the first entire thing is about theory spikes in general, but his interp just says that you put the theory spikes at the top, so the theory spikes still exist in his world. And then second on substantive education, he says that if you put them at the top, the debate is shifted away from the spikes, but actually shifted toward the spikes because that's the first thing you see, and then you talk about them more, and then I'll drop the argument. First, I didn't know coming into the round that the arguments I was running were going to be unfair, given that theory is X by factor rule determinately unfair to completely drop me for something I had no reason to predict, and two, the only arguments that factor into judges' decision calculus are the ones that have been extended through multiple speeches. If I don't vote for the argument, then it's not one that you can hold me accountable for. This outweighs since the arguments show that his advocacy is inconsistent with your role as there's 3 reciprocity without drop the arg. Theory is an it for me, thus drop the arg, avoids and and preserves equal access to the ballot. Fourth, dropping the debater because of theory maximizes the judge bias. So 1, actually don't read that. And then fifth, dropping the argument is more educational because it enables us to get back to the substantive debate and still be educated on another layer. There's no education if you just drop me, but otherwise there is philosophical and topic education that can be gained. And don't give me RVIs. Give me RVIs because he conceded the RVIs in the underview. A is that NC can dump shells, B is time skew, and C is 2 in our class because the 2AR is too short to rebel. And then the standards onto the interp are 1 negative strategy because the negative strategy is better upheld if you see the spikes numbered in A, B, and C than if they're just at the top. And 2 is substantive education because if they're at the top, then you're thinking about the spikes throughout the entirety of the AC, and then you don't get as much education. So I just turned both of his standards and then onto the NC. First, even if morality is normative, when morality's purpose is to guide reasons, not explain reasons, the question of morality is not what are reasons, rather we need to ask what ought my reasons be. Only an externalist account of morality can coherently explain where moral standards originate. And 2, internalism doesn't produce any moral prescriptions because different agents can endorse a different set of reasons. The belief set of one agent is rarely the same as another, thus one person may have a decisive normative reason to do X, while another person has a decisive normative reason to avoid X. Thus morality loses both of its functions as a guide to action and as an evaluator of actions. And third, internalism denies the ability to weigh reasons between persons because of different belief sets. This means that in addition to prescribing contradictory things. There's no way to resolve conflicts and reasons and rights under an internalist system, which leads to irresolvable paralysis in action. Even if motivation is important, it's not sufficient. Morality must check back actions if it is to exist at all, because it's meant to validate actions. Moral motivation must be a necessary condition because it's not alone a moral principle. And fourth, the internal desires only form reasons for me, because there's no reason to do what I desire. Changes in what I desire simply affect what I need to do in order to fulfill this external reason. Our internal reasons to do X because I desire X is only a reason because of the external reason, which operates independent to any other internal motivations. Thus, internalism cannot ground normativity without conceiving the primary of externalism. Either A, the reason to do what one desires is contingent on one's desires, which makes internalism circular, or B, there's no reason to do what one desires, which means internalism cannot ground normativity, and you defer to externalism in order to ground morality. And then he has no offense under his contention level, because his contention just says that if we use contracts, people have to be equal under them. However, he says that the nations are unequal, but we can say that people in those nations have equal value and their value as persons. So just because one nation has access to more resources or something doesn't make it unequal if we're talking about their actual human value. And then on to the F. Extend the first advantage about health inequalities. The impacts are first. The first impact is extinction, because disease leads to extinction. All the offense was conceded. Then on the second econ advantage, you can extend that econ is key to reducing poverty in these countries, and that poverty kills. It's the most probable impact in the round. And then util, there's no impact to the fact he says not motivation. Normativity isn't considered motivation. Just because people won't follow it doesn't mean it's not true. And then all his reasons to coherentism, and he says that there's no metric for what coheres, but I say it's what underlies someone's beliefs. So even if Nazis said that had these bad beliefs and people had different beliefs, their underlying assumptions were that they were doing it for their own pleasure, so that pleasure is good and pain is bad.
Cool. Start 57 seconds neck prep now. All right, so the order is going to be real quick on theory, then moving on to the AC, and then NC.
Theory first?
Yep.
Wait, can you put that?
What? Theory, AC, NC.
Okay.
Everybody ready? Okay. Starting.
Now, she concedes the argument that says that she cannot apply her the spike to take off my shell, which means she cannot apply her RBI to my shell, which means that she cannot win the reverse voting issue on the shell. You can also extend the conceded argument that says why the AF cannot get RBIs independently because the A incentivizes AF to reason abuse of interrupts, and the B point this creates a chilling effect. AF is uniquely dangerous in theory because they get to read block counter-interpretation, the 1 AR, then 2 AR to wait collapse and incentivized next always get incentives to reading theory against good theory, which is the intimate abuse, which means that also controls the internal links to the meaning theory, because then I could never read theory to meet its purpose, which means that her RBI arguments are not sufficient because mine controls the largest internal link to any of the voters. So also this just means that she can never win theory in the first place, but also she says that we have to drop the argument, which means that if she does win a reverse voting issue, that just means that you drop my drop my shell. It's not a reason as why you vote her up. So now we're moving to the day. Sorry, Matt. The problem with my opponent's strategy on the form is that all she does is respond to the first response to coherentism, though, then extend all of her advantages, but she concedes a ton of arguments, that's why we never use utilitarianism, and a ton of turns to her actor specificity arguments that says that we can never use her framework. She concedes that overview to the fourth point. She said that actor specificity come first because if I win that actor specificity turn, then you can never value her framework. You can send 3 conceded turns. That's 1. Policymakers can't be utilitarians because they have duties, constituents as individuals, not just a collective. So her interest politicians couldn't justify adopting policy which innocent person torture to kill. The second point, there's a role-based non-utilitarians or constituent feature political office, such as following the concept Constitution, the third conceded point that says policy making involves such duties to the limited class of being such a citizen, which means that you can't follow utilitarianism under having policymakers because util demands that we give interest to all individuals in the entirety of the world, which means that this or that we can never look to a framework. So this means that even if she proves that she proves that underlying beliefs are positives and negatives, it doesn't matter because she says that active specificity comes first, and I say that active specificity means that we can never use utilitarianism. But also she just concedes that she just does a terrible job of handling the coherentism argument. She only responds to the first one. She concedes that there are infinitely many things that can go here, which means that you still need a higher layer of framework to evaluate between them. And the third argument says the overall body belief means that literally anything is justified. Her only response is that the underlying belief is having pain or pleasure, but that's just entirely unwarranted. And she concedes that it's unwarranted. Some individuals can have different things that lead to them having pain and pleasure. That's the point of this argument. So you can't look through a framework, which means that you're always voting negative because she concedes you presume negative. So let's go there. On the negative extent that negate means neither truth of the has have two implications that you presume because there are more reasons why a statement might not be true than ones directly prove the statement true, which means that because I've already proven that we can never use the affirmative framework, and that means that all of her advantages go away, then you always should presume negative, and she has no offense in the round. So now you can look, and now you can just extend a lot of the conceded arguments in the contention level. But like the problem is that her arguments against my framework against internalism are arguments assuming that I was reading like Trent's internalism app that says that we use internalism as a guide to action. But the problem is my framework just says internalism is what motivates action. It's not saying that internalism guides action. I say that contracts is what guides action, giving that internalism motivates action. She doesn't have any response to that internalism motivates action. She also concedes that even if the external reasons can motivate action, that it only happens because it collapses to internalism. So let's extend those. So extend the choice evidence that says that we can only every external reason that collapses to internal. She concedes the A, B, and C point that says that the external reasons are epistemically inaccessible. Individuals have unlimited wants, and that we only care about our own desires, which means that we can only be motivated by internal reasons, which means that all of her arguments go away. All of her arguments go away, which means that you can never actually be motivated to affirm in the first place. She concedes that Libet says you can never be independently motivated to affirm because there's no active contract that says we have to affirm. Then she concedes that the evidence that only contracts solve the motivation problem, which means that you can always look at contracts as the solution. She also concedes the independent consent argument, which means that even if she does go for utilitarianism in the next speech, that doesn't matter because there's no consent to those arguments. Then now let's go to the contention level. The only response to the contention level is that we can look to the individuals within that. Under each nation, but the problem is that the resolution says there are two actors, it's two independent nations that interact with each other, and I say that there's no contract between those nations that can be formed, but also the individuals within two nations are obviously not equal on a substantive level because individuals in Africa are put in a terrible situation due to the colonialism that has occurred there, and they're the only reason that you say that they should get some sort of development assistance, which means that obviously they are at a substantive disadvantage in the first place, and you can see the Kegley evidence which says that they are economically and militarily not on an equal level, which means that they can never be a contract. So you just concede the Godey evidence says that there has to have an equal party to have contracts. So basically the way the round breaks down so far is I've deflated all of her offense on theory because the offense just assumed that she got an RBI, and also the RBI implied drop the debater. Not only have I done that, but I've also won that on all of the substance level you're always going to be voting negative. But real quick, I'm just going to go through the theory arguments so that she can't try to collapse to the interpretation of the next speech and try to give reasons as to why she should get the RBI. So let's go through those. My opponent's arguments on the RBI is basically that we shouldn't put it at the top of the position because labeling them A, B, C is sufficient. But the problem is that she says that we'll be thinking about the spikes the entire way through. But my argument is not about how much we're going to be thinking about the arguments, but rather that if we want to have substantive education, we have to put the spikes at the top so that I have the opportunity to meet those spikes in the first place. So that after I meet those spikes, then we can have the ability to actually debate the substance level. Otherwise, I will not be able to debate the substance level because those theory spikes could be used. You could just extend those theory spikes out of the underview, and that as a reason as to why you should drop me independently, which means that I wouldn't actually be able to debate substance in the two, and I would just be losing the round automatically. So the substantive education arguments that the church makes the substantive education is terrible. She's just saying that we would be thinking about spikes, but then obviously I would also be thinking about spikes the entirety of my prep time anyway. If you put them at the bottom of the position, I would also destroy my ability to think about the substance that I had thought about for the previous 5 minutes of your speech in the first place, which means you also concede it turns your critical education time because that can only happen if we had substantive class in the first place. So you can extend the substantive education argument that her counter interpretation is extremely mediocre. Her next argument is the next strategy skew. It says that it would be really good for your strategy if there was ABC at the bottom, but obviously she doesn't understand the argument that is that they have to be at the top because otherwise once I'm thinking about your position substantively for the first 5 minutes of your speech, then once you get to the bottom of these underview arguments, then it's going to completely change my strategy, which and she concedes that neg flex always outweighs, so those go to conceded, which means that I'm always going to be winning on that argument. Then you can just extend those conceded arguments. So basically, if she wants to collapse the theory in the next speech, she can't. The arguments she makes against theory are very insufficient. She also just doesn't have an RBI, but there's literally no way she can win on the substance level because she concedes way too many independent arguments as to why she can never win. She concedes too many framework arguments that say that even if she proves that at the basis are desires of having happiness or not have or being or experiencing pain, that doesn't matter because it can't guide action in that respect, and then I win on the NC pretty easily.
Okay, I have 32. Okay, the order's gonna be theory. Is everybody ready? Okay. An overview on theory, he says I can't win theory because I said drop the argument. However, you also notice that I conceded all of his reasons to drop the debater. So you can just go for drop the debater. So then he says I don't get an RBI, but he also concedes all the reasons why I do get an RBI in the AC, and I responded to his. So first, he says you don't get RBIs because of abusive interps, but he doesn't specify like if the interps are so abusive and the interps are so ridiculous, then you can just win the theory debate and then just win on substance. And then B, he says it creates a chilling effect because then they read a long counter interp in the 1AR and then get the 2AR to collapse. But then he conceded the 2 NR collapse impact. When the NR gets to go 6 minutes in on theory, the 3-minute 2AR is not enough to recover. So 2 NR collapse outweighs 2AR collapse, which means it's easier for neg to win theory. And then those are the only reasons he has to know over there. Then he concedes the 3 reasons why I get RBI. A point is that NC can jump shells. They get 7 minutes. They could read as many shells as I want. And then theory is just a nip for me. I would have to answer all of the shells and then win on substance. That's impossible in a 4-minute 1AR. And then B talks about the time skew. If the theory shell precludes 6 minutes of the AC, which it did, because I had to answer that before I even get access to any of my offense. And C point was the 2 NR collapse, which was conceded. So I'm clearly getting an RBI. Yeah. So then on to the counter interp. He does work on the counter interp, but he concedes a few detrimental arguments. The first is on the neg strategy. He concedes that the interp doesn't solve any of the offense because the interp just says that you put spikes on the top, but the entire warrant in the neg strat is spikes in general, says that spikes are bad because of all these reasons, but he still has spikes in his interpretation. And then on the section of substance education, I say that it's actually bad for substance education if you have spikes at the top because then you don't actually listen to the AC. He first response he says that then I think about it during prep time, but it's still better to think about the AF while it's happening because then you can actually listen to what the debater is saying and then you catch more of it than if you're just trying to catch up on your speed truck later because then you'll be thinking about the spikes less. And also second he says there's no opportunity to meet the spikes, but there's no actual real warrant for this. He just makes generalizing claims. You can still meet the spikes if they're on the bottom. It's not paragraph theory. They're clearly organized. It's like 1, 2, 3, and then ABC under those. He can still meet them, and he did meet them because he responded to them, and they're very easy to read. So then onto the offense under my shell. So the first thing on negative strategy, so the counter interp is that they just must be numbered and not be paragraph theory. The first is neg strategy. It's better than his interp because his doesn't say that they have to be organized. It just says they could be at the top. It could be totally incoherent in the way that they're formatted and you wouldn't be able to read them. And then second, on substantive education, is that you actually get to think about the AF more and actually engage when they're actually reading the affirmative case. So then all the reasons why I get RBIs were conceded.
Good round.
Good round.
No, congratulations to both debaters for being in the round robin.
Yep, the decision's 3-0 for the neg.
Do you go ahead?
Sure. I don't really think the 2AR says much on this reject the argument thing. I definitely don't think you can just be like, never mind. I'm not going to make that argument. Also, by that logic, you also kind of dropped all the guys arguments. You just remade your own. So if you can just cross out your arguments, because you didn't respond to his arguments.
Yeah, really similar decision. I think if you make the drop the debater arguments, and he's like, sure then, let's extend for drop the debater arguments. You don't have to stand up for the 2AR and be like, never mind about that after all. I think also in the 1AR, you don't actually extend most, if any, of the RBI arguments that you make. You kind of talk around them, right? Like, AF should get RBIs, but I don't think in the 1AR you're actually extending any of the justifications for that, which means that in the 2AR when you are, it's sketched, right? Because the warrants aren't there in the 1AR. I think also a lot of the analysis that you're getting in the 2AR is pretty much entirely new. But more importantly, I think he has very clear reasons why no RVIs in the 1N, that the warrants actually are extended in the 2N. So I think he's ahead on RVIs. Even if he's not, I think it's still an issue of drop the argument. So it's pretty clear from there.
I'd be more persuaded by this, like, I didn't answer the, like, negs drop the debater argument, and therefore I get to go for drop the, like, therefore I don't have to deal with this if the neg had not explicitly extended, it was drop the argument for you in the 2NR. And also the technical concession of you can't apply spikes to my shell in the first place also implicates my ability to even think about this. And like there's also questions about whether or not you're even winning the shell entirely in the first place, and all of this like sort of leads me to conclude.
Was the counterinterp written?
No.
Why did you go for that?
Well, I thought I saw her reading from a piece of paper the counter-terp, and then I was just like, you know.
But I
thought
don't know
I
why
wanted
you
to-
didn't, like, as soon as she stopped that speech during prep time,
That's a
as
good.
was the counterinterp
That's a
written.
good point.
Because
Didn't think about that.
I could see she was just holding her flow and accepting the counterinterp, but I was like, that should be the end of the round, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So like, did you write it? Well, no.
yeah, just, or like, say, like, can you show me the counterinterp? That's probably the right way to ask it, not like, did you write it down? Because then people might try to lie.
Like,
Just
oh,
like, can you
yeah, I
show me
did.
the counterinterp? Yeah. Do you guys have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, next round is supposed to start in 15.